Yes, we are now down in the shed again and ready to test the Plus 4. And this is the adapter I made in the last video. It should fit like so. And this one goes into the back of the Plus 4. Fits nicely. And the composite video cable. And on with the power, like so. And the TV, the Trinitron that I tested in an earlier video. I can try to switch this so you can get a shot of both. Yes, the power is on here. You can see that it's 5.15 volt and it's AC light. So it's just to turn on the Plus 4, like so. We can see the power LED lights up, and yes, there you have it. So the adapter works fine, and this Plus 4 that Tommy at Arctic Retro fixed up still works just fine. So then it's about finding out which parts in the other Plus 4 it is that is broken. I've just done a quick reseating of all the chips in this. All these chips, the ROM chips and the PLA chip and the CPU and the TED chip is actually socketed. So I'm just going to do a quick test again. And this was kind of strange. No, nothing has happened. And I wiggled the... Before I reseated the chips, I actually got a blue picture, and now it's nothing. Okay, I did a reset and this is what I got. Okay, now I get a purple picture. Reset again, and now a green picture, and on and off again, and now it's nothing. And reset, and nothing. Yeah, I will just try to reseat the chips by pushing them down, and also check that there is none of them that are more hot than they should be. This was a bit strange. There seems like it's some intermittent fault, but that can of course be inside one of the chips. It doesn't have to be this PCB that is bad to have that kind of fault. Inside of switches and capacitors and other stuff that also have the same kind of faults. But I will take a quick measure of the voltages, and the easiest to measure is this 74 chip that has the power diagonally like so. Yeah, and it's 5 volt and it's good. AC voltage, it's 10 volt and good. So voltages is okay. And I turned it on and off, still black. But now it acting differently. It doesn't give a black picture, it actually gives intermittent noisy picture. I will try to reseat some of these chips again, and I also will try to wash the sockets to see if there are some corrosion, because this fault was really strange that I don't get a constant error on this, that I actually got something to show up on the screen. Now my brother is going to get mad at me again for not using the chip puller he gave me. But actually I do have a reason for that here, because this is really close to these capacitors and this sink, and it's very difficult to get that to fit through there. My friend Tommy at Arctic Pietro actually told me that he had a diag room for the Plus 4. And of course in the Plus 4 you have the room for the built-in applications, and if you change one of those applications with a diagram, you will have something that you don't have on a C64, and that's an available room socket. If you do that on a Commodore 64, you actually have to pull the kernel chip and replace it with something, as you do on the Amiga. You take out the kickstart rooms and replace them with the diagrams. I'm going to use this deoxidizer spray. I have lost the straw that should be on here, so it will be a bit of an uneven spray. But as I said before, I have washed a whole motherboard that actually was totally covered in corrosion, and I washed it away with this oxide clean, and the motherboard actually worked afterwards. This socket that's used here is the single swipe kind, where you only have the contacts here on the inside, and it's very easy to get bad contacts on these kind of sockets. And I think it's the same on this one, but it's a bit difficult to see because I can't see on the inside of the socket for the CPU. But all the rooms at least have the single swipe kind of socket. The result was much the same. It's after reset is a black screen. I do think there are some kind of life in this machine because of the changing colors on the screen and so on. So what I don't know, I've pulled out the TED chip again, and I'm looking on this socket to see if there are something to do with that. And I do have put on some deoxidizing, and I'm scraping this with this thin piece of, this is actually a wire wrap foot from back in the days when they used wire wrapping for prototyping boards. This chip has actually been pulled out of this board before because the legs was bent on one side, and there was also some cooling paste down here that was not there before. Now it is the same as it was before. You can see there on the screen it changes color when I put the reset switch. So there is some bad connections somewhere on this board, but it also can be the CPU or some other chip that won't start. So that this is only because the TED chip is getting some kind of clock signal. This is the kernel ROM, so that will leave inside, and we take out the other application chips. And I seem to remember that this should give us a black border if the CPU was okay, but it does not. The CPU in my machine that has had a 6510 replacement, Tommy has actually desoldered the socket and put the 6510 directly on a PCB that's mod this socket. And that's probably because of space requirements. These other finished made PCBs that you can get for this, they actually goes back like here so that you get more space beneath the keyboard. So he has soldered in this solution, and that means I can't use that to debug. And Tommy actually has one of my other Plus 4 in Bodø, and that has the older 7501 CPU inside, but that chip was also broken, so it will be no good to test that. All the other chips seems to be working okay. This is my Plus 4, and what I have been doing now off camera is that I have tried these other chips in my friend's Plus 4, and none of them gave another results. I actually tried them the other way around first by testing the ships from the non-working machine into this, but that didn't give any result either. Every one of the ships I tested actually worked. And here you can see where Tommy has soldered in this custom-made adapter, and I think this is very charming and into the time way of doing things and not by some ready-made PCB. So I think this is actually quite the nice fix. But that means that what we have left to do here is to try another 8501 chip in this machine. And for that I actually have a solution. So we will put aside this for a while. I have to of course mount it together and screws and everything. But I have this machine, and this machine is also owned by the same guy that gave me this one to repair, and this has another fault. This actually has a bad picture output, and I thought at first that this was related to some bad soldering and stuff inside of this computer, but this will be a totally different project. But this computer actually has a working 8501 CPU. So what I will try, I will take out this 8501 CPU from this one, and I will actually try it in this plus 4. And this is the one from the C16. And with that we will give this another go. I will try to shift my camera like so that we actually can see the monitor together with this and see what the future will bring here. Yes, and here we have one seemingly working plus 4 computer. And of course this computer, the plus 4, is more valuable than the C16, so I have made a deal with the owner of this computer that if this chip was working, we will mount a heatsink on that one, and we will focus on repairing the C16 with maybe a conversion with 6510 CPU. But that means that this computer is working, and I will mount a heatsink on this, as I said, to spread the heat a bit from the 8501 so that it will hopefully last a bit longer. When I plugged in the keyboard, I actually see that I have some more difficulties with this computer. The keyboard won't work, the spacebar is working, and the function keys are working, but none of the other keys seems to work. And that probably is due to an electronic fault, but that will be quite easy to test, as I hadn't put the lid on my other plus 4 yet. Yeah, so I will try to plug in my other keyboard with the Tommy note on top and check. Yeah, and this one seems to work. So that means that the fault lies with the keyboard or something within. So that means we have to break out the screwdriver and take this one apart. It's quite similar in construction to the C64, I think, but I've never actually had one of these keyboards apart before. As we saw in the last part of the video, the keyboard was not working, and I have done some inspection of these, and we have one place here that there are some suspicious cracks in the cable, and this kind of flex cable like this, it often corrodes, and you have some corrosion marks here, and that might be a source of concern. But I think this is, yeah, good enough. And they also have connection on just one side. So this side here, the wire is exposed, and on this side it's covered in plastic. But as you probably can see on camera, we have one place here where it actually looks like a crack, and I will just try to dismantle this plate and see if I can measure out this point. But as we see here, there is one loose screw here, so maybe someone has been inside here before, because this screw might have been factory, might have been fixed, but it's not loose, but it's totally at an angle here and not screwed in. So I'm not sure what that is all about, but I'm just going to take out all these screws. Yeah, someone has been inside here before, because this is not the factory soldering on this. And yeah, I can also see some marks in the cable where they have been unscrewing this screw, so definitely someone has been inside here before. I have never actually dismantled the keyboard on the Plus 4 before, because the Plus 4, in my opinion, when they was sold in Norway, there was never much used, and when they was used it was only for some games before they was passed on the shelf. So I never had any damaged keyboard or something like on the Commodore 64, where you actually had a lot of keyboards that was worn out, to put it at least, because they was not very high quality keyboard. It was very good to type on, but the solution with the coal or graphite pads that should short circuit the PCB was never a very sturdy solution, and we often went out to clean those or just to swap the keyboards. And I wonder what happened when we swapped the keyboards back in the day for Commodore, when it was warranty. You get a new keyboard and you just sent in the old one. Maybe they was refurbished, maybe they was not. But I really wish I had kept some of the extra keyboards that I had back in the day. And I only actually have one keyboard that I salvaged from, not salvaged, that I had from back in my repair days. So this was a spare part keyboard that I actually have kept. You also have the LED here, and the resistor for the LED is part of the keyboard. That's not the case on the Commodore 64. Yeah, I'm just heating up my soldering iron and try to lift this cable without doing any damage to anything. That was, you see, it was bent on the wrong side. Actually see that this is melted around here. It's very strange, so it's almost like it does not come off. Yeah, but this looks clean and good enough, but I was thinking of just doing some continuity testing on this cable to check that every lead actually is working here. So what I will be doing in effect is I just put this down here, and I just measure from this pin to this pin to see if there are continuity. This on sound test, so it's easier to hear if it's okay. Yes, the cable actually looks okay, and remember we tested my good keyboard from my good Plus 4 in this motherboard, so it's no electrical fault, so the fault must lie with this keyboard, and that actually is a problem, because if the cable checks out okay and you have a totally dead keyboard, that's something that's really absurd, because every one of these has to fail if it's not a failed cable or a trace on the PCB. And it's also so that it's keyboard like this is organized in a matrix, so if no keys are working, that's a rather bizarre thing to happen. But what we do know is that the function keys are working. So what's the difference between the function keys and the other keys? And the function keys, as we can see here, they lead to these ones over here. And they have the return line. What's the common line on these ones? You have one common line, common line, common line, common line, and this common line is going, see here, it's coming here. Nice, this one is also a common line for some of the others. So this is really strange behavior. What can lead a keyboard like this to work not at all? When the cable is good, the connection seems sound, and you don't see any obvious damage on the keyboard. So this is a really strange behavior. So the first thing I want to do here, I actually want to assemble this again, and I want to check that there is no issue with the plug and other things, that it was a coincidence that it was working with the other keyboard. While I'm in here, it would be crazy not to clean the contacts. So I will just take on some isopropanol and give this a easy rubbing. But I will be really surprised if it's this rubbing that makes this work, because as I said, every key is broken and is no obvious dirt. So I'm just going to put this back in, and I can check with the multimeter when I press some keys. There are some key mappings obviously in the service manual. The key mappings for the Commodore 64 is really well documented and is used in projects like the mechanical keyboard that's made for the Commodore 64, mech board or something it's called. So that's very well documented. And in the service manual for the Plus 4, it's obviously also documented. At least there will be a keyboard matrix to show how this is mapped to the internal keyboard decoder mechanism. It's a bit special about these machines with the TED and so on, because this was a multi-purpose chip in all kind of manners, and in the Commodore 64 it's the CIA chips that do the keyboard decoding. But since there are no CIA chips in Plus 4 or VIA chips that it was in the VIC-20, then there must be some other magic behind it. This one, was the one that was crooked, and it actually was some damage to the threads on this one. So probably someone has been inside here before and not cleaned up well after them. That might mean that there are some obscure problem with this keyboard, and that someone has trying to fix it before, or that it might was some curious guy that just wanted to know how this was working and took it apart. At least I know I did when I get my C64. I took the keyboard apart to just see how it worked, so I can surely relate to that. The keyboard was made by Mitsumi, and Mitsumi also made keyboards, not all the keyboards, but some of the keyboards for the Commodore 64, and they also made keyboards for the Amiga, so that was a long time vendor with Commodore. And that's a bit unusual with Commodore, because they changed vendor all the time. But there surely must have been some special relationships between Mitsumi and Commodore back in the day, as they stayed their supplier of keyboards for so long. Yeah, that sure is contacts on the caps lock, and there is no reason to do more than that. And you also had this padding that lay on top of this, probably to save this cable from being punched. I actually can see now. This is something I didn't notice before, but you might be able to notice this on camera. You can see this pin here, it's actually corroded, it's quite green, and this was one of the return pins for the matrix, so I'm just going to clean this a bit more. I used this deoxide in here, but I'm going to give this a better cleaning than I did first. The strange thing is that it worked with my keyboard, but of course it has to work on both sides, so we are going to give this a clean on this side too. I'm just going to give this a good dose of this deoxidizer, and I'm going to rub it like so on this cable. And the one that actually was corroded in the pins, it's the same one that I pointed out here, that it looked a bit corroded. So there has been something going on here, maybe some moisture or something at some time. Yeah, this will be really exciting to see what the result will be. But I will give this kind of a better scrubbing. I use this pin, try to also rub on the side of this contact. This deoxidizer don't evaporate as fast as isopropanol does, so I give it a good healthy dose of isopropanol afterwards, and the isopropanol will clean this and evaporate, so there will be less residue left on the other parts of the PCB. I have not fastened this PCB yet, because until the keyboard was working I was thinking that this was no reason to put it fully assembled together, but we will be able to just use it like so. And here we go. And still no working key. Oh, the space is working. It was working before. But actually none of the other keys are working. And I have to give this another test. I have to test to see if the other keyboard is working. And this is my good +4 keyboard, nicely cleaned by Tommy at Arctic Retro. And this keyboard is actually working, and every key here is working, so this actually is a bit strange. But what I did not do when I was having this apart earlier, I did not measure the plungers on this keyboard, because this plunger on the keyboard should be covered in coal or graphite or some resistance or some material with really low resistance, and I didn't do that, and that might have been a mistake, because if someone has been inside this keyboard and cleaned it with isopropanol, they actually could have washed off the covering that should be on these key plungers. But I will try to rinse the contacts once more and see again. It's really well plugged in, and on it goes. The cursor keys are working, and there I got one E. Okay, now there are some slight difference. No one. Okay, minus I got working. Yeah, I actually got some keys working now, and this demands a deeper analysis, because if there is one trace that is missing, I actually can see if there are some common traits about the keys that's working and the ones that's non-working, because then I can look into the keyboard matrix and I can see, okay, if this trace is broken, the Q, V, R, T keys won't work, and so on. And what we have working here is the double Y. E is working, R is someone working. I actually can get some of these keys to work with working with them. I even get the U. Yeah. I have to take this keyboard apart again, so that will be the next video. We have to do a true repair of this Plus 4 keyboard, because most of the keys are working somewhat. None of the numerics are working even the slightest. But some of the keys, like the minus sign, the equal sign, clear home, install, the Q is working, and it's working better when I work the keys a bit. The T is even working, so that means that I have to do it all over again. I had to take it apart. Maybe they have been in here deep cleaning and washed away most of the graphite from the plungers. I really have to see what kind of technique they have used here. So that's it for this episode of the Plus 4, and this was the third installment of the videos on the Plus 4 computer. It's been some unstructured work on this, and I really hate to do the ship swapping, fault finding methods when I work with things, but I actually have very little experience on modern fault finding on the Commodore Plus 4, because everything I knew about this computer from back in the day is information from back in the day, and it has been 30 plus years, and it's different kinds of ship and different kinds of fails on this computer. While at the Commodore 64 there was some common traits because it was longer on the market. So I hope you enjoyed the content, and that you will follow up on this on the next installment and episode. Please hit subscribe if you want to be notified while we post another video. See you in the next one.